My name is José Celso Freire Jr. I'm the Associate Provost for International Affairs, São Paulo State University in Brazil, and the President of the Brazilian Association for International Education. I'm here today with the delegation from my university, my executive vice rector, and the vice president for research and postgraduate studies. It shows a little bit our commitment to the social cooperation. And we have a booth just here with a lot of information that we would like to share with you. This morning, looking at the Professor Matengo's presentation, I confirmed again my feelings about common challenges Latin America and Africa should overcome. São Paulo State University, UNESP's participation in this important internationalization of higher education space confirm even more the commitment of my university to fostering social collaboration to overcome those challenges. Thanks for inviting us to be here. And we are here to help in promoting excellence in the African higher education system, but also to ask you to support us in promoting excellence in higher education in Brazil and Latin America, as my colleagues from Argentina just mentioned a few minutes ago. As an African proverb states, and I quote, "If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Then let's go far together." To start a discussion about how we can do that, I will do a presentation about the Brazilian higher education system, about my university, UNESP, and the partnerships opportunities we are here to explore, and about a terrific program we are developing in Brazil with academics from Africa. Then the Brazilian higher education system is a huge system. We have about more than 2,500 higher education institutions that in Brazil we divide in 4 big groups. Universities, and we have only about 200 universities. To be called a university, you need to do research, you need to offer PhD programs, and you need to be engaged with your community, and you need to offer programs in all areas. We also have the university centers that are almost like universities, but they don't are comprehensive. Most of institutions are individual schools that we call in Brazil faculties. They are autonomous, but individuals, a faculty of economy, a faculty of law, for example. And we have some federal institutions offering vocational and technical education. Among the institutions, more than almost 90% are private and 12% are public. Among the public, 4.6 of the total are federal, 5.2 state-funded, and 2.3 funded by the municipalities. But for the public system, as in Argentina, we offer tuition-free education at all levels. Students don't pay to study at our universities. And besides, just to mention, last year, for example, at my university, we offered almost $10 million in scholarships, different kinds of scholarships, to allow students not to enter, but to stay at the institution. And important, we are not aligned with the Bologna system. Then, undergraduate programs are 4, 5 years, and 6 for medical schools. Masters, 2 years more, and doctorates for more years. Important thing, we have about 9 million students in the higher education system, and more than 55% are in the universities, public and private. This is a picture of the Brazilian research and development financing system. We have different agencies and foundations, but the Minister of Science and Technology, and the Minister of Education. And at the Minister of Education, we have a very important foundation, and I will talk a little bit, that is CAPES, that is responsible for the postgraduate program in Brazil. Then this is CAPES. CAPES is responsible for the evaluation and the funding of the postgraduate system in Brazil. I will give you some numbers. But just to mention, all programs in Brazil, more than 4,000, they are evaluated with grades from 3 to 7. 5, 6, and 7 are programs of excellence and the best programs in Brazil. Just take in mind, programs of excellence are 5, 6, or 7, and the funding is related with the grade. Then the programs that are 7 receive much more money than the programs that are 3, for example. Those are the numbers. We have in Brazil 4,500 programs, postgraduate programs, and we have more than 122,000 students enrolled in the system. 76,000 academic masters, 4,000 in professional masters. What is a professional master in Brazil? It's a master program that is connected with the industry or the market. In some way, they are solving programs that are proposed by the industries. And we have more than 41,000 PhD students. I'm coming from São Paulo. We have 3 very important and powerful universities in Brazil, in the state of São Paulo. They are funded by the state of São Paulo. We receive about 10% of the incoming taxes from the state. At lunch, someone was asking us about how the system is funded. It's funded in that way. The state of São Paulo decided to apply 10% of the incoming taxes to the 3 state universities. And remember, São Paulo is the richest state in Brazil, responsible for about 40% of the Brazilian GDP. Then USP, University of São Paulo, Unesp, and Unicamp. You have general numbers. I will just talk a little bit about my university, but before, another very important component for the success of the 3 state universities is the FAPESP, the State Research Foundation in São Paulo. FAPESP, on top of the 10% the three universities receive, FAPESP receives 1% of the incoming taxes of the state. It means, for example, in 2020, $423 million PPP, purchasing power parity. FAPESP finance about more than 20,000 projects every year. With all proposals are peer-reviewed, and the average time for decision is about 2 months and 40% of success rate. Then this is the system, the state system. In São Paulo, we also have other federal universities, but differently for other states in Brazil, the biggest universities are the state ones and not the federal ones, as in the other states in Brazil. This is Unesp. Then we are a multi-campus university, a little bit different from the 2 other sisters. We have 24 campuses and 34 schools on those 24 campuses. About 3,000 faculty, 136 undergrad programs, 149 masters, and 117 PhD programs, and we award about 1,200 PhD diplomas a year, being responsible for something like 8% of all Brazilian scientific publication. Some rankings, I will not stop by. We are in the top 5 in Brazil, in top 10 in Latin America. Those are the partnerships we have in Africa. You can see that we cover almost, we have partnerships in almost all countries. In Africa, you cannot read, but we have partners with higher impact publication. Then when we work together, we are producing good and impactful science, and this is very important. Some numbers about research. You can have a look. It is a comprehensive university. We work in all knowledges. We produce good science by the outputs in top citation percentiles. I will not stop by, but you can take a look after. Unesp is the university in Brazil after the University of São Paulo with the second largest number of postgraduate programs. It's USP, Unesp, and Unicamp. We award about 35% of all the PhD degrees in the country. Then the system, 139 postgraduate programs, 100 academics, and 24 professional masters, as I mentioned. We deliver about 3,000 diplomas a year, 13,000 postgraduate students, and about 2,400 postgraduate courses taught in 2022. Just to give you an idea, 21 programs in agricultural sciences, 13 biological sciences, 25 health, 14 natural sciences, 18 human science, 8 social science, engineering 11, linguistics, language, and arts 9, and some multidisciplinary 20 programs. Then we really cover all areas of knowledge. And this program I would like to talk to you because we are working on that. It is a program that started with ARIFA, TED Fund in Nigeria, and FOBAI. FOBAI, as I mentioned, is the Brazilian Association for International Education. And the program was proposed to a federal university in Brazil 3 years ago, and now FOBAI take over and is managing. It was proposed to qualify African faculty, to increase agricultural productivity, and to improve infrastructure. In this morning, the Vice Chancellor mentioned that we should produce science that will solve our problems. And this is a program that is producing science to solve our problems. You probably know Brazil is one of the most important producers of protein in the world in food. And this production is made with Brazilian science. And then we are here to talk to you that we are open to build ties, to build bridges, to develop good science together to solve our problems. Today, we have 27 Brazilian universities participating. This year, we asked those universities for placement for the students from Africa. We received 1,200 offers. Among the 1,200, we have 770 applicants. 73 above 35 years, and this is very important because most of them are coming from universities in Nigeria. Then we are also making breeds that will connect our institutions in the future. 78% are male. Most of applicants sought doctoral courses and postdoctoral positions. Some outcomes and challenges for this program. It is a powerful social cooperation mechanism. In my opinion, it's one of the best things happening in the world of higher education in the world. I participate in different conferences around the world, and it's very rare to see something like that. The Brazilian science contributing to the development of Africa, the Brazilian postgraduate system assisting in the training of African faculty and researchers. It is a mechanism in the other side to foster internationalization at home in Brazilian higher education institutions. We are increasing the offer of classes taught in English, and we are cooperating among us. We are developing joint projects with among the 27 institutions that are participating. One of the challenges, the funding scheme, as Professor mentioned a few minutes ago, the adaptation of the higher education in Brazil to receive this huge amount of students that are coming. To finish, some partnership and networking proposal. Then just open. And as I mentioned, we are here in a booth. Just talk to us or to our colleagues from Argentina, Colombia, and Mexico that are here. I believe they will share the same proposals as I am doing here. Then tuition-free training programs. Students don't pay to study at our institutions. If you will pay a scholarship to send students abroad, think about that. We have good science, and we don't charge tuition for PhDs and master programs. Faculty exchange programs in all areas of knowledge that we would like. It is not receiving your faculty members. We would like a faculty exchange program. Support the development of postgraduate programs in partner universities in Africa. Then we would like to be here with you to support the development, identify common interests and complementarity to develop collaborative research, identify common projects to jointly develop research, and look for international funding possibilities with a huge openness to discuss privileged partnerships. Then this is, would you like to work with us? We are here to work with you. To finish, last slide, as you are having today, we have our Brazilian conference of the FAUBAI Association. It will be in São Paulo next year from April 20 to 24. Then you are all invited to be with us in Brazil. Thanks.
So thank you, panelists, for such an illuminating expose on the landscape that we all operate in. And I think that the comment about coming back, is well taken. And as was said earlier, we've been doing our part in the diaspora to make sure that these connections are important. I think for me, looking at the question of brain drain in a different way, where you're looking at brain circulation, and I think all of you are talking about brain circulation, and I think it's important for us to look at how we may be able to enable brain circulation in ways that ensure benefits for all of us as a global community of scholars. We face challenges from the financial to access issues that are not the preserve of African institutions. I think those are global challenges that we all have as an educational community, and I'm glad that we've been able to surface those questions. The challenge for all of us is how we solve them. And some strategies were put forward. We've seen examples of how this is being done in other jurisdictions, and I think that through these kinds of engagement, we'll all be able to at least, if not get to the ideal, approximate it in more significant ways than we currently do. And that would inure to the benefit of our communities, both locally and around the world. So join me in thanking our panelists for sharing these thoughts this afternoon. Thank you. And with that, we'll hand it back to you, sir.
I'm going to join Professor Tete to thank our panelists and thank every one of us for listening, and to note that there is a special program going on between Nigeria and Brazil, where the Tertiary Education Trust Fund is supporting postgraduate studies in Brazil of about 1,500 Nigerians. I hope other countries can connect to the same initiative. Thank you very much. Please, before we go, permit me to welcome one of our board members. Incidentally, AAU is having the largest number of women in the board at any time now. Our board member, Professor Olanide, the Vice Chancellor of Afe Babalola University. You are welcome. Thank you. I have this special announcement to make. The luggage for Professor Alode Salako has been found, so he or she should see them at the reception. As for Mr. Lansford, also the luggage of Mr. Carlos Saluade from Mozambique is also found. So those two people should, their luggages couldn't come with the flight. The luggages are here now. I want to thank the team for the... Yeah, just to note that for this session, we did not make provision for discussion, but for the remaining 2 sessions, if we check our programs, we have sessions for discussion. But with the approval of the chair for this session, we can still entertain 1 or 2 comments based on the opinion of the chair. Chair, sir, over to you.
Our goal is to engage and interact, so we'll give 10 minutes for questions and so on. Yeah, please, do you have the microphones access to?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the leadership of AAU, Secretary General of AAU, Professor Olushola Oyewole. I think some of you will need to take a 2-unit course on how to pronounce that name, Olushola Oyewole, and the president of AAU. When I saw that Professor Ishaq Oloyede will make a presentation for 10 minutes, and I saw the depth that he will need to cover and the extent, I was amazed that you were able to cover everything. And you gave us, because I had a list of the barriers, I had a list of the bridges. You doubled the barriers that I listed. You double the bridges, like Julius Berger will do in Nigeria, the bridges. So it occurred to me, Secretary General, sir, that this year we have Advanced Excellence. By the way, I'm Peter Okebukola from Nigeria. Advancing Excellence in African Higher Education. 2 years down the road, we are going to be thinking of another theme. 2 years after that, we're going to be thinking of another theme. And I was just wondering, you may have it, that by 2050, where does AAU want to take higher education? Do we have a blueprint for that? I doubt if we do. So if the answer to my question is yes, I would like to take this opportunity to propose that AAU sets in motion the machinery for developing what, for want of another label, blueprint for excellence in African higher education by 2050. You may decide to pitch it at 2063, but I think 2050 will be a great year, 27 years from now. And based on what Professor Ishaq Oloyede presented, he is vantagely positioned to chair that ad hoc committee. And I see that you appointed us as ambassadors, and we can also offer some service in that project. So my suggestion for this session is that or my prayer is for the leadership of AAU, especially the Secretary General, who is so innovative, so creative. I thought you were clapping for him. So creative to set in motion the machinery for us to have a blueprint that will guide, that be a lodestone, guiding our work from now and for 27 years to come. Thank you for approving, Mr. Secretary General.
I want to thank you very much for that suggestion. Right now, we have African Higher Education Ambassador for West Africa, North Africa, South Africa, and from distance and open and distance learning. Please, I'm putting this to them that in the next 6 months, each one of them should provide us with blueprints for excellence in African higher education in each of their areas. And we will compile them together and make them into a book. That collation will be chaired and edited by Professor Okebukola. They will deliver in 6 months' time. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one more comment or question, and then we'll wrap it up so that the next session can start. So, yes, sir, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Alam Ahmed. I won't take long. I think there are two major challenges for African universities. I would love to have seen them. I haven't seen them. The Vice Chancellor of Namibia said it earlier, electricity. This is a big problem for all African development. So universities in Africa should consider that. And the solution for electricity is generators. So the priority for any university to ensure connectivity with the rest of the world and that circulation of diaspora, you need to have a generator at the university. Without a generator, don't even think of being connected to the rest of the world. Number two, I have said this and I would like to repeat it. No internet, no progress. Many universities I have visited, there's no internet, there's no Wi-Fi for students. If you don't solve these two problems, I don't think you can overcome any of the challenges currently you're facing.
Thank you. I'll give a chance to, I think both panelists can address this, even though it's Africa focused. I'm sure your experiences may be helpful as well. So we'll go with Shaq first.
Thank you. I think I agree with you but disagree with you. I agree with you in the sense that you are being specific. I disagree with you because you are just picking part of the problem. In Africa, municipal services had become the responsibilities of the universities. Elsewhere, they are not so. So if you are taking internet, if you are taking electricity, there are other factors, bad roads, laboratories. All these are other sectors. I agree with you because these are critical, but I also believe that what we are talking about is to have the resources and to think properly. You will not be able to have enough at any time, but you can be innovative. If you go out here, I went out this morning and I saw how panel, because we keep on lamenting in Africa, no electricity. Don't you have the sun? And is anybody stopping you from putting those panels as had been done here now? Look at the car park. The car park has been made of solar panels. So let us not think that, yes, until some people come from somewhere to come and solve our problem for us, we will continue to be in poverty. We believe that we must be creative in our thinking, and then all these problems will be solved. Thank you.
I don't talk the same thing, but sometimes people think that Brazil and Africa, they are not really, they don't have the same problems. But imagine to have internet in the middle of Amazon, for example. Imagine to offer access in the very poor regions in the northeast part of Brazil. I'm from São Paulo. I am from São Paulo and New York. If you take a picture in the middle of São Paulo, in the Paulista Avenue, you may say that it is an avenue in any big city in the United States. But we are not talking about this region, this part. Then a professor mentioned different possibilities, solar panels, but I believe the problem is behind. Our colleagues from South Africa, they are working very strong with the decolonization vision of higher education. And I really believe that we should take some of insights that are being produced in South Africa regarding decolonization, not follow the same path, not do the same things, and think about our problems and find solutions that are proposed by our higher education institutions. I believe this is the first step to change, because if you try to find solutions that are applied in other parts of the world that they don't leave our problems, I could not see a success for this strategy. Then let's try to think in a decolonized way to solve our problems. I believe this is one of the best ways to succeed. Thanks.
So on that note, we'll finally bring this session to a close. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your engagement. And we look forward to continuing this conversation in the hallways. Thanks all. Thank you very much.
So please, we go to the next session now, the plenary session number 4. And may I invite here the chair, Professor Teresa Iko-Akeji, and then Ms. Joy Owango, and then Dr. Samad Hussein. You can have a seat. The chair for this session happened to be the president of Ruforum. She's also the first vice president of AAU, Professor Teresa Iko-Akeji. She is the vice chancellor of Bamenda University in Cameroon. Over to you.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the organizers for giving me this honor to chair this plenary session 4, stakeholder engagements in the development of higher education in Africa, presentations from strategic stakeholders. Our rapporteur for this session is Dr. Dilimeke Nashandi from the University of Namibia. And we're going to be listening to two presenters talk to us about some very exciting topics in my point of view, because this is gaining new knowledge on my part, because I'm completely lost when it comes to these disciplines. And we're going to be listening to an experienced founding director with a demonstrable history of working in professional training and research capacity. And I'm talking about Ms. Joy Owango, the Executive Director of the Training Center in Communication, Public Library of Sciences. She's going to be talking to us on forging strategic partnerships on open science policy dialogues in Africa. And then we're going to be also hearing from Dr. Saman Hossein, who is currently involved with internationalized domain names and universal acceptance initiatives at the International Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. He's not able to be with us here this afternoon, but he's going to be represented by the Director of Stakeholder Engagement and Operations, Yaovi Atohon. You all are welcome. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to listen first to Ms. Joy Owango, and then to Dr. Yaovi Atohon. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. So what I'm going to take you through are a series of stakeholder engagements that we've been co-hosting with the AAU and our partner PLOS. And this was focusing on open science policy dialogue. So open science has become one of the major higher education trends happening in the last 2 or 3 years. And there's been quite a lot of conversation on it, particularly now with the creation of the recommendations, the UNESCO recommendation of open science. But what we are seeing is that as much as we're having conversations on open science dialogue at policy level and national level, there's been low adoption of open science within our institutions. Yes, we do have universities that have open access policies, but we do not have, in Africa so far, there is no university that has adopted open science. Now, the reason why we chose to have the open science dialogues targeting higher education leaders, namely vice chancellors, deputy vice chancellors, and directors of library science, is because at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. We could have all these conversations, but you'll have to present it at Senate so that it can be implemented within your institutes. So the fact that we do not have universities right now adopting open science, we need to take you through why we were doing this and the kind of partnerships that we had to create at regional level in order for this to be achieved. And hopefully, by the time we are done with these activities, we are going to have at least some universities in Africa that have open science dialogues. But at the same time, I also want to share the concerns some of the vice chancellors, directors of library sciences, and deputy vice chancellors presented to us, because there is a cautious optimism by university leadership when it comes to adopting open science, as much as it is important for researchers. So as a center, we are based at the University of Nairobi. That is the leading research producing institute in Eastern and Central Africa. And our objective is to train, support, and empower researchers and institutes and also governments through capacity building in improving visibility and impact of their research. As a center, this is what we've done. We've been supporting master's and PhD students, pretty much postgraduate students, in their research life cycle for the last 15 years. To date, we've supported over 20,000 researchers, and we are not taking over the roles of universities. It's pretty much supporting the research life cycle within universities. We are very cognizant of the administrative dynamics within universities, and sometimes not every student is supported, especially when it comes to meeting their goals in publishing and graduating. So that's where we come in. That is our job as a research capacity trust, to support universities. So we've successfully worked in over 40 countries, and as we speak right now, we have a mentorship group of over 900 researchers, active researchers, going through their master's and PhD, and we support them from research idea to graduation. So as I said, I really need to emphasize on this. We're not taking over what the university does. It's working with the universities in meeting its goals. And it's out of this that we realize some of the biggest challenges in achieving these goals was lack of access to resources, and open science can actually mitigate that. So some of our core activities include, as a center, is open science advocacy, which I'm going to take you through. Open infrastructure, which I'm truly excited about because it falls under the realm of open science. And our flagship project in that is the Africa PID Alliance, where we are going to start producing digital object identifiers in Africa, affordable digital object identifiers, which are key in making African research output visible and accessible. So another program we work on is Data for Impact, where we want to provide open science services for industry, because open science is needs to be multisectoral. And these are some of the things that came up when we were liaising with the vice chancellors in these open science dialogues. And obviously, the higher education stakeholder engagement. So, as I'd said earlier, one of our partners was the Public Library of Science, PLOS. Some you may know them as PLOS. It was the first journal to come up with the open access model as we know it. And they have been truly pushing for open science amongst early career researchers and mid-level career researchers. And what they're trying to do is break boundaries, empower researchers, redefine quality in research, but also promoting open science. And this is why they've been key to this partnership. And their goals when it comes to open science is to make sure that integrity and trust is amongst the academic community and the research community, foster collaboration and build on existing work, accelerate research dissemination, and enable all to participate in the process and the benefits of science. And not only PLOS, but also our view on open science is that it is a transition. Okay, it's a transition, and it means that access is just the beginning. All of us knew open science from open access when it came to the publishing bit. What we're talking about is the greater realm of it and how it can support a university. And let's be honest, it's good to hear what is happening in Argentina with the access to resources that they have, but that's not the case in most African universities. We have limited resources, we have limited fiscal, infrastructural, and human resources. So what does that mean? Open science can be one of the ways in solving this. So that's why we're saying it's a process of transition. What most of you know about open science is the publishing bit. So the aspect of being introduced to the greater realm in supporting the university is extremely important. And this is what led to some of the mutual active benefits that both PLOS and TCC had in creating these open science dialogues, because we believe in open science thought leadership, advocacy, and engagement, because we've had cases whereby, yes, you have an open access policies, but you don't have researchers and institutions adopting it, mainly because the engagement wasn't done. Building a communities of practice and increasing equitable participation in open science. Now, the agenda of today's talk and how it matters, why we need to be involved in this open science conversation. Number one, when we came up with the open science dialogues, one of the things we had to do was come up with strategic target stakeholders who would help drive this conversation. And one of those stakeholders was the Association of African Universities, because we felt as much as we are having these conversations on open science, as I said earlier, the universities are not adopting it. When you talk to the vice chancellors, you realize the dynamics within a university is that as much as the vice chancellor is the head of the university, he still has she has to report to Senate. And as much as she or he has to report to Senate, it means that there needs to be consensus amongst the leadership within the university in adopting open science. And this is when we noticed that there was a disconnect on the communication between the directors of library science and sometimes the directors of research and the vice chancellor. So out of that, we felt that we needed to get some regional, some case studies, regional, national, and institutional ones. And we are going to share with you the outcomes and some of the observations that came out of it. Pretty much the reason why we are looking at promoting open science dialogue is developing and enabling a policy environment whereby the stakeholders are all equitably involved and aware of why they need to adopt open science. As I'd said, not all institutions are adopting open science because, first of all, there are internal political reasons, but mostly it's lack of understanding and awareness. But also promoting common understanding. As I said earlier on, the directors of library sciences are the ones who began this conversation on open science. Now it has moved to directors of research, the deputy vice chancellors, and also the vice chancellors themselves. So having common understanding on why this is important to them is essential so that they can have, or they can create mandates within the institutes. So these are the target stakeholders we've been working with. So ministries, directorates are responsible for STI, higher education university commissions, national research councils, funders, and representatives from library consortia. So this is why we had to have the open science dialogue. First of all, as much as it presents a compelling case for transformational science and efficiency, there was a need to show a return on investment on funding, and open science is one of the ways you can do that. There's an urgent need for policy frameworks, national guidance to address policy development gaps. Of course, now with the creation of the UNESCO recommendation on open science, we now have a uniform or a unified framework that institutions can use as a guide. But all this needs to be done with continuous capacity strengthening, and both at institutional, national, and regional level, and it has to be multi-stakeholder driven. So even when we host our open science policy dialogue at regional level with governments, we always make sure that it is multi-sectoral, because even as universities, you are addressing and supporting various sectors other than the academic community. So these are some of the policy, the regional, national, and institutional policy dialogues we've been hosting, and some of them have been with, like in the case of East Africa, we worked with the East African community and the East African Parliament. And what you can see at the top is the most recent was one we did in Egypt, and the most recent one we held was in South Africa. So in total, we've done 3 so far. The first one was held in July last year in partnership with the University of Dar es Salaam, because one of the things we made clear was that universities in the representative region had to host that meeting. So University of Dar es Salaam was our host, and they invited all the Eastern African vice chancellors, deputy vice chancellors, and directors to come to Dar es Salaam for the meeting. And the second one was done in Egypt, and our host was the British University in Egypt. And the third one was done a few weeks ago in Southern Africa, and we were hosted by two universities, University of Cape Town and University of Pretoria, bringing in universities from Southern Africa. And also it attracted two governments to take part in that meeting. So the NRF, the government of South Africa, and the National Council for Research and Technology from Namibia. So what did we find? So from Eastern Africa, 97% of the respondents were familiar with open science, and 3% were kind of aware of what open science entails. Please note, this is leadership within the university. And we went ahead and asked them a few hard questions, and that is, so if you had, what do you need to do in order to have open science implemented within your institute? And this is where we saw most of the leadership faltering. Though they were aware about open science, the part that you need to note is at the top right, where we asked them, to what degree would you be willing to work with the Vice Chancellor's office in supporting the process of open science? In the case of Eastern Africa, 13% say that they would work with the Vice Chancellor's office. So you can see how low that is, hence the cautious optimism when it comes to the adoption of open science. In Northern Africa, we got some good responses. So 85.98% say that they were aware of open science. 12% said they had a potential idea of what it entailed. And when we asked them to what degree will they work with their vice chancellors, just look at the bottom right. There we go. Bottom right, 11% stated that they would work with their vice chancellors. You see, the responses are still low. And it was out of the meeting in Egypt, targeting the Northern African vice chancellors, that we found out that the vice chancellors noted that when open science was brought to their desk, it was presented as open access. So the aspect of publishing, not the greater realm of open science, which included infrastructure as well. So it was also that lack of communication within the institution that made it difficult for the vice chancellors to say, okay, why are we adopting open science? They feel like they're still spending more money as well. So this is why they felt that's why we're seeing the responses were very low, and it's really important for these conversations to continuously happen. Then in Southern Africa, 74% were aware of open science. Remember, this is just not South Africa. These were the universities in Southern Africa. And 20.9% had an idea of what it entailed, and 4% had no clue what open science was about. And 11%, at the bottom right, 11% said that they would work with the Vice Chancellor's office. So you see, as much as, and I like that it was in Southern Africa and we were hosted by two of the big 5 universities, because the 2 of these big 5 universities are well aware about open science, but then we need to also be critical about the dynamics within countries that have very big universities. Not all of them are on the same level. So we could also see the same challenges that is in South Africa that was also being presented in other parts of the continent. So the outcomes that came out of this that were clear was that there was need for increased involvement with leadership in adopting open science. As I said, there's no African university that has adopted an open science mandate. We do have universities that have adopted open access mandates, but that focuses only on publishing. So open science covers the entire spectrum as well. And then there were also issues of infrastructure. How do we adopt open science infrastructure? Do we even understand scholarly infrastructure to the point that we can adopt open science ones? Now, the issue of rewards and incentives came to play, and this is actually the main reason why the vice chancellors are actually bulking on why they need to adopt open science. Because we're already using traditional methods for promotion. So you need to publish in certain journals, that have a certain impact factor, even though part of our conversations was to look at other innovative ways for incentivizing researchers, and also looking at other ways on how you can assess research. But universities are still using the traditional methods for promotion. So you find that once that is still within the university policy, researchers are not willing to change. And then there's the money aspect. In some countries, like in the case of South Africa, there's a budget put aside for researchers if you adopt open science practices, but that's not happening in all countries. And in some universities in South Africa, they have put a budget aside, but that's not happening in all universities in South Africa, and definitely not in all universities in Africa. So the issue of finance came to play. So how do we incentivize researchers to using open science practices, yet knowing very well that open science can actually help in increasing the rankings of universities? So we are still at that dilemma, because the second phase of this project with the AAU is going to focus on incentivization and rewards, coming up with innovative incentivization and rewards that the university already has, and implement them when it comes to supporting researchers. And of course, the legal and ethical issues were also raised. So, moving forward, there is a need for increased regional and institutional open science dialogue, and it needs to be multi-sectoral, and that is what we've been doing. We need to come up with innovative rewards and incentive schemes. This is not also at a government level. As university leaders, you need to look inwards and ask yourselves, how can you improve your own existing incentivization schemes such that you have researchers adopting open science? There's a need for increased cohesive conversation amongst higher education stakeholders on open science, and we need to develop or adopt the best reliable open source infrastructure. I'm happy to see that the Ubuntu Alliance is one of the sponsors of this meeting. So as university leaders, please take advantage of national research education networks. So the Ubuntu Alliance is a regional education network, and they help in solving the issue on open infrastructure, understanding open source infrastructure that universities can use, and also giving universities bandwidth and internet connectivity so that they can support this, such that by the time now you're adopting open science, you have all this infrastructure put in play. Thank you so much.